I'd like to make a motion, we approve it.
Second?
Have a second? Mr. Clerk, please.
Councilmember Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
Okay, we have any comments about the consent agenda? The resolution extending the emergency is necessary in order to keep getting funding from the federal government, even though the real emergency seems to be over with. Okay, mayor and council items, do you have any items for Fred?
I have one,
So, I'm sorry, this is the mayor and council item that actually have agenda items attached. So the first one is to consider the application for the appointment of the local planning agency.
Motion to approve. Second.
Yeah, he was here.
And the applicant
is
is
here.
here.
Still here?
Mr. Townsend
Please
is
come
here.
up and introduce yourself, please, sir. You got quite a resume. From New Jersey, oh, God.
Please don't hold my resume
I
against
take
me.
that
I
personally.
grew up in Pennsylvania, I know Jersey.
Thank you for
I
the
lived in-
consideration, thank you for the
lived in
opportunity.
Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area,
Ah, okay. South Jersey, I was in South Jersey.
yeah, good,
I've been here since 2015, full-time.
very good, very good.
Well, thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for consideration, and hopefully I won't let you down, and I look forward to meeting all of you, working with you. Thank you.
We have motion and we
We have a motion, and who's the second?
Motion, second.
we have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Next item is the public hearing on, I'll actually have Michael read out the title.
This is the second reading of an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, amending Chapter 24, Flood Hazard Reduction, to clarify the definition of market value as applied to existing building in special flood hazard areas, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, and scrivener's errors, and an effective date.
Okay, can you comment? I got a question. It talks about the depreciation, like if you had an older house that was flooded as opposed to a new house that is flooded, what's the difference in the 50/50? The
So
50
the CAC is Aida Lonergan, the city's floodplain manager. Your question is actually a different component than what we're correcting in our ordinance. I can answer your question, or I can address on how it would relate to the ordinance. I just want to make sure I'm answering you, addressing your true
I'd like
question.
an answer for that question, but I'm gonna vote to correct it, but I'm just curious, what would be the difference between an older house and a newer house with the same amount of damage?
So how the rule relates, it's about we're going to we have to determine a market valuation, the structure value for the purposes of the 50% rule. We're going to look at the estimated valuation of just the structure as provided from the property appraiser. Should anyone disagree with that valuation, their alternative to appeal that process is to provide a private appraisal. That a private appraisal is going to address just the structure, not land values or pools or docks, seawalls, none of that, just structure value.
Carpets and windows and.
Exactly, and that is given with a pre-damage calculation. So when we talk about substantial damage, the 50% rule, it's the cost to restore the dwelling back to its pre-damage condition, which means that they can supply us with a market value before the storm. That is accomplished by a previous modification we made, allowing for the appraisal, the private appraisal, to give us a depreciated replacement cost of that structure. That's meaning that the appraiser's going in, evaluating the situation, saying, how much in today's construction market would it take to build this structure like for like at its original pre-hurricane condition? They'll take that construction number and depreciate it based off of the age of the home. That's how they're getting credit for current construction values and pre-hurricane damaged price. We do cover that a lot in our resident outreach and education, because they're concerned that if they order an appraisal, they will be penalized because the house is gutted because they had to rip out all the drywall. So we do look at the pre-hurricane damaged value of the dwelling in making any determinations.
Where's the depreciation come in?
The depreciation, because
You got a 40-year-old house and a new.
exactly, well, that is the industry standard on, and FEMA's approved method on coming up with that valuation. The property appraiser is going to be assessing a lower tax base for an older home than they would a newer home. So it's the same method applied in both scenarios. A newer home is going to have upgraded finishes, higher level of standards, and then of course that's going to appraise at a higher value versus an older dwelling that likely will have a smaller footprint, a different type of construction standards. So the valuation is really based off of how was the house built.
Okay, so if the rebuilding is the same price for both the old and the new, then the older house, he gets closer to the 50% rule.
And the logic that I think you're asking is that in the 10 years I've been a floodplain manager, I have only ever had 2 private appraisals to come back at a lower value than what the property appraiser said. So traditionally, yes, if a resident is having complications with navigating the 50% rule or getting close to that threshold, a private appraisal is recommended because traditionally it comes back higher.
Can I do a motion to approve?
If he wants to rebuild.
If they are looking at rebuilding to its pre-damaged, non-conforming status. If they want to put it back together the way it was pre-storm at a lower elevation that doesn't meet current standards, that is the legal process. And we don't guilt trip. If that is their process, we educate and allow them to make the decision that's best for their needs, as long as they can do so within the parameters of federal, state, and local regulations.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Steinmeier,
Aye.
Councilmember Corey. Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogaz.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon. Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
All right, that brings me to my item. I have before you a request for a 6-month extension to the bonus density agreement with Madison Capital at Bonita 75. If you recall, this was a deal done just before the hurricane, in which they're, under our administrative code, they were using the valuation of the acquisition of their property to essentially buy bonus density units, a total of 42 units. After the hurricane, there's been a lot of work by both sides to try to figure out where we are with this, and given the circumstances, we're just asking for a 6-month extension.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Question there, in a year's time, this payment is based off of the sales value a year ago?
Correct.
So if the sales value is up quite a bit now, he's getting the old value?
That would be correct.
There's no reason for him not to continue? Or why, I don't know why this is delayed.
So because it was a condition of the original plan development, the payment had to be made
In a year.
actually by tomorrow.
That's right.
So-
It's the
so-
day before.
As we were trying, at the last couple of months, we've been trying to get clarification and the approved signatures, and we didn't kind of work that out until the last couple of weeks. And so it just made more sense to ask for a blanket extension than to come up here and do a planned amendment change to the code to give them additional time. At the same time, they still would have lapsed even if they had gone back and done the other evaluation. So
Okay,
the
so
simplest solution is just to ask for an extension.
if somebody came along and wanted to buy the whole thing, they could. It's not tied up.
No.
No.
It's
No,
tied
and
up to the conditions
pol-
on the plan
pol-
development. But if the payment doesn't get made, and it come after 6 months, they would have to come up with a new valuation in order to get credit for those units. Otherwise, they just don't get the extra
And
units.
somebody come along and buy the whole thing right now?
Someone could do that without this extension.
Okay. Any other comments?
Motion to approve? I think
And
we
I
already did that.
second it,
Yep.
yeah.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes. Councilmember Bogaz.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon. Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Aye.
Thank you very much. I have one other, just quick update, just for everyone's knowledge. You might have all seen an email going back and forth about the city's code with respect to drones. We've reviewed it. We do actually need to change the code, so I will be bringing that forward, and I'll let the gentleman who sent the email to all of you know that we'll be bringing that forward at a future date.
What, can you give us a?
So the preemption, there's a state preemption on local governments having regulations of drones. There's also federal preemption on the states regulating preemption of drones. You can still regulate drone usage by the operator. So in other words, someone wants to walk into our park and the operator standing there controlling a drone. We can't regulate the drone, we can regulate the operator. We have an older code that covered this issue. If it's something that we wish to continue to regulate, there are ways we can look at protecting the public, but I don't think it's a concern, and I don't think we've ever had any issues with drones. It's probably just cleanest and to avoid any issues with preemption that will probably continue to evolve over the years as drones, I would just strike it out of the code.
Okay.
Thank
Did
you.
you vote on that? No.
I'll bring it back, if there's no objection to it, I'll bring it back in a future code change.
Okay. I think we need to look at it.
Thank you.
They're attacking Russia and Ukraine with these drones now.
As long as they're not attacking people in our parks, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, manager, city
Yes,
manager
thank
is
you,
approved?
Mayor and Council. This time, I would like Lisa to come forward. We're going to give you the presentation of the June financial report and discuss the updates to the budget that we've provided to you, the draft budget. And from that, we'll be going into item B, which will need a separate vote for the adoption of the proposed millage rate and a separate vote for the resolution to establish the annual stormwater assessment fee.
There you go. Good evening. Tonight, we're going to present the June financial report, which is a monthly report that we do to show you all some operating data, financial data, if you will. The first slide that we have before us is the general fund revenue. That's as of June 30th. This shows you the composition of our regular recurring operating revenue, which is so important because this is what we use for our day-to-day operations. As you can see, the ad valorem taxes, 49%. Those, we collect most of those in November, the beginning of the year, and then they go down in the pie size consistency as we move forward into the months. This is the general fund revenue. This is a comparative slide. It's current fiscal year to date as compared to the prior fiscal year to date. This really helps us see some revenue trends. It's very exciting at this point that we're seeing some increases in some areas and no significant decreases this fiscal year to date. And I think from what we're hearing, we're going to talk in a few minutes what we're hearing about our budgeting data that we're hearing on our revenue sources out of Tallahassee. They are not budgeting for several of our major revenues to fall very much. And that just means that's good news for our economy as a state as a whole. General fund expenditures, you will see here, these are our regular recurring operating expenditures. The categories that are provided there are the ones dictated by the state that we utilize so that we can be comparable to the state's budget and all the other municipalities' budgets. We are seeing much as the rest of the state and the rest of the nation, inflationary increases. And that's primarily what we see. Again, it's fiscal year to date as compared to the prior fiscal year to date. Restricted revenue. This slide actually shows our major restricted revenue categories. Again, fiscal year to date as compared to the prior fiscal year to date. And I must say, the building permit fees had a very good month last month. So up until this point in the fiscal year, they were lagging quite a bit. But a lot of activity in the month of June with respect to pulling new building permits. We're still seeing consistently our road impact fees and our park impact fees. Those are fees that are paid for new constructions. Those are lagging over what we had in the prior year. And we're not unique in that. It's our area as a whole, and I'm not sure about the rest of the state, but definitely Southwest Florida with respect to new construction permitting. Cash balances. We provide you all 3 fiscal years of cash balances so we can identify trends. Again, we attempt to accumulate money and set it aside for our capital improvement projects, pay as you go, if you will, and that keeps us from having to borrow. We plan out, we review the projects and the capital improvement program, and we allocate funding according to the priorities we set as we go through our budget hearings. This slide is also a continuation of our cash balances. These are our restricted funds, our park impact fees, stormwater, building fees. As you'll see, our building fees are going down. Part of that was a planned reduction so that we could come in line with a Florida statutes to saying that they do not wish for entities to hold too much money in the building fees because the building fees are designed to pay for themselves. We are going to be watching that, and I think we're going to be looking at coming back to maybe to figure out how to adjust those fees to keep that fund financially healthy. We're watching it very closely, but we're not unique in that. It's the same with all other entities in Southwest Florida. Yes, sir.
Part of that affected by the cost of permits for the storm?
Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is. And the revenue as well, because we have waived the fees for the storm thus far. So all those things come into the fact that people aren't pulling as many non-storm related permits because of the new construction dip we've seen, combined with everything else. Yes, that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Question.
Yes.
When are we going to end the waiving of fees for building permits?
For the storm-related
Yes.
incidents, I think we were looking at providing at least 1 year post-storm is what the goal was, and then we would evaluate it based on the types of permit as well, what made sense. For example, if it took longer for roofing contracts, that might be something we looked at, but quicker permits might be something that should have been accomplished by now. So John's going to be working with us to come back with a recommendation, but we were going to try to provide at least 1 year.
So September.
And I would say that we should have discussion on whether we want to extend it past a year or not before we get too far down the road.
We're gonna let the snowbirds come down and see what they got to look at. And see if they can hire anybody and get materials and all kinds of stuff. We're in a bad situation, but we'll
That
get
might-
through it.
That might be where the tiered discussion comes about what are the most appropriate permits to continue to allow the fee waiver for, and those that are seemingly easier to.
Yeah, some of these people haven't got their insurance.
Yep.
Yes.
Still up in the air.
And there's a lot of angles here.
Lisa, if I may make a question to you, that increase that we saw in the permit fees, and I think I saw Mr. Dahmer hiding behind former Councilman Gibson
He's
there.
not used to getting good financial revenue news lately.
Where are those coming from? Is it single-family homes from the tear downs? What is it?
Do you know about the consistency? It actually, the level that it was at in June was similar to what it was pre-storm, so.
It's not going to be long-lived. It has to do with the Weeks Fish Camp, has to do with the last high-rise going into the colony. So we've had some big projects that have come in lately that have kind of skewed those numbers. We're in a complicated period right now. A lot of our communities that we've had, where most of our single-family building has been taking place over the past 21 years, is essentially getting built out. We're looking now more towards redevelopment in Old 41. We have a handful of new developments that have not come online yet, but between now and when those start is going to be a kind of a guessing game as to when they feel that the moment is right to start that construction. So we need to have some discussions. The building industry is changing in Bonita Springs simply because of where we are maturity-wise. We just don't have the large tracts of vacant land anymore. So we're looking at more of a different type of development that's going to carry us forward.
Is that sea leaf, that, Wiggett?
Salt Leaf?
Weeks Fish Camp, is that?
I
coming
always
up?
call it Weeks Fish Camp. I've forgotten.
Okay.
Salt Leaf.
I was out there for the groundbreaking. Do they are we expecting some money from them on the second building, or where are we at with them?
They have
A
a
big
handful of
project.
buildings that they will be building. Right now, we're looking at the main structure first. So I think that once they get this underway, we may see them immediately. It may be a little bit before they come back in for additional permits. But we only have one building permit in.
John, it wasn't the answer I wanted, but the one I expected. So the next question on that is, do you have a ballpark? It's not fair to you, but I'm good at that, right, Lisa? How many scrapes have we done? How many demos have we done, single-family residences? I'm looking at that saying,
The one that knew the answer just left. But
Dexter,
we do have that number. I can get it to you.
that'd be great to know.
I just don't have it right now.
Thank you.
And I can also come back maybe next month and I'll show you the comparison again to the number of houses that we did on our initial damage assessment versus the number of EN-related permits that have been pulled too. So we can kind of see where we are recovery-wise.
Weeks Fish Camp, there's like 300 and some units out there.
I don't think it's 300. It's less than that, but it's a nice building.
Or is it two buildings?
Technically, it's one building, but that's a different story.
Well, we broke the ground for the second building.
Yes.
He's got 90% sold in one building and 60% sold in the other building. What do you think the one building might come up, is it per unit that they build? How much impact fees are gonna come out of that?
The impact fees is per unit. It also is per square foot for non-residential uses. So that has already come in for at least what he's pulled permits for.
He's already paid that?
For the permits that he has pulled, but that is not the entirety of the project.
I'm talking about the impact fees.
Yes, sir, I am too. So when he pulls a building permit, he pays the impact fees associated with that building permit. He has not pulled all of his building permits yet for that project, but for the project that he has pulled building permits for, he has paid the impact fees.
Okay, all right, so it's still on to come.
As long as he keeps pulling permits, there will be additional impact fees.
Okay, very good. So we could use them.
Take this off full screen.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yep, the budget update.
So now we'll move on to the budget update.
How this goes, they're letting the accountant operate the electronic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably, might need to call someone.
Where's Jordan? Help. Logan.
The next PowerPoint, budget update. How did you, we'll talk about that later. Might have to have a special session just for me. Bring me into the modern technology. So now, part two, tonight of your financial session, we are going to give you a budget update. Tonight, what we hope to do is just present to you what we believe we understood from the last meeting was direction and consensus provided, and also then get your feedback and your direction for moving forward. And the next item on the agenda is the millage rate vote, the first millage rate vote. And we'll talk through that too as we go through here. We have had some positive economic news from the state on our half-cent sales tax and our municipal revenue sharing, which is 80% sales tax. The state has just released our revenue estimates since the last meeting, and they're in line with what's in your budget. Now, to caution you, the numbers that we placed in your budget were a reduction. We assumed a reduction. We assumed about a 2% reduction. So, and as we can see, the state is coming in line with that. That speaks, to me, that's very healthy, economically speaking, that the state did not go down anymore. But we still do need to get our communication services tax and our local option tax. And I must say, this is the first time I've ever seen those numbers come out this late. And the state, again, does quarterly revenue estimating conferences on all these different revenues. So we might see some reductions in those when we come out, but if so, we'll talk about them as we go forward and how they might impact our budget. Increased level of service budget changes. This is the general fund, the regular recurring operating general fund. This is the direction of the consensus that we had last time to add these two items into the budget, so they will now be in your budget numbers that you see today. Capital improvement budget changes. These are three changes to, you see capital improvement projects there. Again, based on the direction we received or what we understood occurred at the last meeting. Morning Fields improvements, utilities, underground utilities. That's, I understand, a placeholder, and it was put in out years. Hopefully this reflects what was discussed. A traffic study that we got together and came up with this project name, Pelican Landing US 41, Old 41, excuse me, US 41 interchange improvements, because that's where they were talking about the traffic study at. So this traffic study would be phased over 2 years, and those are the funds that we think are an estimate to get that project going. Technology infrastructure planning. You'll recall this was a capital improvement program that is in your current year budget right now. However, when we populated it in your budget last fiscal year, we had initially thought it would be under the American Rescue Plan grant. Well, that grant, we were given the opportunity to go ahead and close those out and utilize that for governmental services. So we reallocated this budget, this project for general fund. So that would be your general operating fund that would fund this capital improvement project and replacing the grant. Capital improvement project timing. Staff reviewed this particular CIP project, Paradise Road Bike Pedestrian Improvements. We determined that the timing could be moved forward 1 year, or back 1 year, if you will, so that it would be fiscal year 26, 27. We looked forward on how we could possibly speed up the timing on that. And capital improvement budget changes, proposed disaster reserve allocation. We understood that we were tasked with looking at how we could do some disaster reserve additional allocation. We worked together, came up with this plan. This is just a preliminary plan. If you have other direction you'd like for us to go or any other feedback on this, please feel free. What we did was develop disaster reserve, an additional allocation annually. This would not put an additional significant strain annually on the general fund. Now, we will have to find this money each year as we go through the budget, but this is similar to what we do with other allocations. We do vehicle replacements, we do minor road repairs, we do asphalt overlays. We plan for those in our capital improvement program and make sure that we allocate funds for those. So we thought this was a good way to do that.
Same procedure used for the beach renourishment program.
Yes, exactly, too. Thank you very much. So again, we are not, given the challenges that we have this year with respect to Hurricane Ian, not only and inflation, we did not populate any additional allocation to the reserves this coming fiscal year. So we were hoping year 2 forward we could put some amount such as this in there. And if you'll see, the way this slide is laid out, the current fiscal year that we're heading into, we have about 6.4 million of reserves total. Now that's disaster reserves, as you see indicated there, and the operating reserves. There's a note here that operating reserves does change over time. It's 4 months of regular recurring operating reserves. That really is, I don't know if we spoke about this last time, but that's intended to keep the lights on. Like if we have revenue interruptions, for example, we all know in our modern technology world, something may happen, the state may not be able to remit us revenue for a month or two, the county maybe, those were what those are primarily for. Of course, they do help us with our disaster preparedness, and can be utilized that way. But when you combine them, they're 6.4 million. So as this is preliminarily laid out, we would go the next 4 or 5 years, and we could come up to 8 million. Now that's very close to what we experienced with Ian with respect to disaster, or the debris removal. That was our initial cash outlay. So again, this was just our initial take on how we thought we could get that accomplished. We're open to feedback, and we want to, hear if you all have some alternatives to approach this. So this slide actually provides the summary of proposed changes. This is the impact on your general fund. This is the increase in expenditures, and then the increase in capital transfers. Capital transfers are one-time only projects, non-recurring. And the total impact of your unassigned fund balance.
When did we pick up this capital transfer?
This is actually,
The last meeting.
yep, here it is right here. It's actually the traffic study, the Pelican Landing, Old 41, US 41 interchange improvements, and then it's the technology infrastructure planning, those two total 375.
We also had a request for more reserve.
Yes, and
In this next.
this one showed one illustration of how we could do that, but there wouldn't be any additional funded this fiscal year. It'll be next fiscal year, if you all were to.
24, 25.
Yes, sir. And again, we're looking to direction and discussion, whatever council would like. But if you can let's get to I wanted to show you all one last slide. This is the projected unassigned fund balance as of September 30th, 2024. And I'll make a big note here, but please keep in mind that we are going so far in the future, this will not be exactly where we end up. So this is the estimate that you all saw July 19th, the roughly 4.3 million. The impact of the budgeted, proposed budget changes that we've outlined here today in detail. And then it gives you a new estimate for if you adopt all these changes, this would be your unassigned fund balance that you would see in your next budget draft, which is 3.6 million. Now, the note here says the unassigned fund balance, we recalculate that because this is an estimate. It's based on estimated revenues, estimated expenses. We know actual collections of revenue and expenditures will be different. We just like to let y'all know that we'll apprise y'all of when we get an exact number. Final thing, this is your budget calendar as we head forward today. Today, we talked about you will be taking your initial mill rate vote. That will be the vote that is on the trim notice. While I'm up here, we'll go ahead and cover that. They've got a green sheet in there that outlined that for you all. If we have budget updates to present to you at the next 2 regular council meetings, we'll do that. We'll give you new data we get from the state, hopefully, or some other information we gather. And then you will have 2 more millage rate votes at your 2 public hearings. Tuesday, September 12th at 5:30, that'll be your tentative budget hearing. That'll be your next millage rate, your second one. And then Wednesday, September 20th at 5:30, you'll have your final budget hearing, which will be your 3rd and final millage rate vote.
Additionally, Lisa, we've been requested, should we receive any more updates from the property appraiser, we'll continue to provide those updates to you as well.
You want I propose an 1.8, 0.800 millage. Do we vote for a millage right now?
So at this time, your proposed draft budget is set at the .8000 per 1,000. So we are looking for direction from staff on where you'd like to set, from council, oh, sorry, it's a long evening, I apologize. We're looking for direction from council as to where you would like to set the millage that will be presented in the trim notice.
Yes. Go ahead.
My question is, today we vote, my understanding is whatever we vote today, we can go down, but we can't go up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lisa, if I go back to the September 30th, 22, governmental funds balance sheet, and I look at the unassigned surplus as of the beginning of this fiscal year, we were at $7,112,000. And now we're projecting, using the .80, that we would be at $3,561,000. So roughly 50% of what the unassigned surplus was at the end of September of last year.
Yes.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that unassigned surplus.
Too low.
Too low. You know, so roughly, I mean, what does 1 penny do in terms of taxes, roughly? If we went from 80 to 81, what does 1 penny do? Just
Would you be referring to revenue for the city as a whole or individual household? Because we did,
No, it's the city as a whole.
I think as a whole.
If we increase the millage rate, how much does that increase our tax revenue?
We did take a look at the 8173, which is what you were before. That would increase the city's revenue by roughly $260,000.
Only 260,000.
Yes, sir.
Lisa, what was the millage rate before we lowered it?
Yes.
That was it, .8173. That was,
And I would argue we should go back to it.
Just for, to be clear, the 7 million, there were unanticipated grant dollars included in that. And then also to consider the fact that we don't even have any idea the amount of money that we're gonna have coming our way from a number of sources still. So it's like, we're kind of looking at, in a number that was inflated due to government dollars that came in, and we're in a situation where we're in the downturn, but we're gonna have a bunch more coming. So it's like, it's this certain snapshot, yes, but holistically, I don't think the problem is as big as it looks in this single snapshot, just due to the influx and outflux of the federal and state dollars that are gonna come in. And that's, again, that's why it is so high, I believe.
But it's unassigned surplus, so it's not unspent grant monies, right?
Well,
I think what's going to happen, if we get through this fall without a hurricane or disaster, we're good. If we have a disaster, we have problems, and we'll have to raid projects, probably slide some projects to get some money. Some of the money won't have to be paid right immediately, but there are things we could do if we get in. If we don't get a hurricane and a big event, we're good till next year.
okay, I'm looking at the interest and earnings are up $1 million in 9 months from last year. So we're not, if interest rates stay the way they are, we could probably get another $300,000 or $400,000 on interest alone. So I vote to stay at 8.8000.
Second.
I say we go back to .8173, which is so minuscule. I mean, that,
So procedurally, what you would do is you would vote no to the thing that I just seconded, and then you would make your own motion.
okay. Thank you.
Just a comment, if we're gonna do what's probably one of the most painful things for any city council to do, when you've got unemployment at 3.6, 3.7, and in Lee County and Collier County even less than that, this is probably a good time to consider this.
I don't,
I'm not comfortable with the reserves we've got.
And we also
I
don't,
don't
we're
wanna
hitting
take
into our
any more
savings.
money out of people's pocket.
But we also don't know for property taxes, the number coming back from that yet.
And our ad valorem has gone up for over a decade every single year. So I feel like from a trajectory standpoint, for us to now hit people, I just don't feel it's the right thing to do. With this economy and the situations that we're in, recovering from a hurricane, people who still don't even have answers on their insurance yet. And we're talking about, well, can we, their year's almost up. They don't even know what the answer for the insurance is. But we're like, oh, and maybe we should also raise property taxes. When at the end of the day, our ad valorem may go up, and we may get more money than we're even anticipating. So I hear what you're saying, but again, I mean, we just got to look at, we got to zoom out, and I don't think that this snapshot is indicative of our financial health as a whole.
Well,
Well-
hope is not a plan, okay? We can hope for all this additional revenue. Hope is not a plan.
We
need
have
to
$1
plan.
million more than we did last year, just in interest.
So,
And that's
I'm talking,
unencumbered.
I'm
That could go
talking-
in the general fund.
but the policy decision is, how much do we need to carry an unassigned surplus? And if you look back at the history, and I pointed this out at the last meeting, that there's been a 20% increase in inflation since 2017. And at that time in 2017, we were carrying about $7 million. So we have really cut back on the unassigned surplus. And I just, I'm not comfortable with doing that. Because we know that if we have another disaster, then we're going to be right back in a situation where we got to front end the money. And I don't think we should have cut the tax last year, but we did. But I'm not wanting to say what the tax rate ought to be, but I think the key policy decision is, what do we think is an adequate unassigned surplus amount?
If we don't have enough money,
Because that's what you solve for. You do the whole budget process, and then you say, what do we need to have an unassigned surplus? And you solve, and you back into that number. That's the number you solve for. And so maybe we don't need to go back all the way back.
Maybe we don't need to spend $100,000 on a 4th of July celebration.
That's a policy decision, but I'm just saying,
I don't,
And we also have the fact that we have now a recurring cost of 2 deputies and, $250,000.
What is that in comparison to the totality of our budget? We understand that you don't like that, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
It does have something to do with
No,
it
doesn't.
because our savings, we're cutting into our savings.
We are cutting into our savings.
let's just think about it this way. When do you ask people for money? When they've got it or when they don't? And I would be really uncomfortable going back to our community and saying, we need to raise because we don't have enough money. Give it back later, but now's the time to do this.
But when you say that, you don't want to go to them and say that you want more money. That's exactly what we're doing by raising the ad valorem. We're saying we want more money. So
No, we're saying we don't have enough money, and do you want to make sure that our city stays financially sound going forward? And if we are, Jesse, we can give it back.
Exactly.
because that's just like
Didn't we cut-
ordinance is sunset. It's
Didn't
just
we
that-
cut the millage rate?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so what I'm saying right now is I think Chris is saying the same thing. If we can put some money aside now, knowing that hurricane season isn't over, our reserves aren't where they really should be.
all right.
We got to
You've
think
been on
about
the
we're,
council for a
we're
year.
not only
We have a
We have a
motion.
motion and a
Call the
second.
question, yeah.
And not only Ian, we're coming out of COVID too. So you got to think we're on the heel of 2 consecutive years of catastrophic economic events. So you have to put that in perspective.
And what did the economy do during and after COVID?
Right,
Shut up.
right, and it can't get worse now though. Literally, we're at the bottom. There's no way that. Well, I guess after the election we'll see, but I don't see us being in a worse position at this point next year than we are this year.
Call the
We
question.
can, okay, good.
Councilmember Fullick,
No.
Deputy Mayor Forbes,
Is the motion to stay at .8 or what is it?
Yeah,
The motion is
stay-
stay at point.
stay at
I'll
8.
support it.
Councilmember Bogas,
No.
Councilmember Purdon,
Support.
Councilmember Carr,
No.
Mayor Steinmeier,
Yes.
Councilmember Corey.
No,
The motion fails 4-3.
Okay, we got 2 more chances to change it. All righty, what else we
No,
got?
you have
No,
to set, you have to set
a
a,
millage rate this evening.
Huh?
Now we have to set it.
I make a motion, we set it at what it was, 8,
8.000.
no, what it was the prior year,
I made the motion.
and it failed.
and it failed. So I'm making a new motion, correct?
Procedurally, she's finally where she's supposed to be, yes.
Thank you, Jesse.
And we already passed the one motion.
Yes, but we
No.
lost, so now she gets to go, and then she's gonna ask for it to go back to the way it was.
lost.
Yes, we lost. She has the right to now do that.
What is the rate that Councilwoman?
8173.
8173. Is there a
Do I
second?
have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Deputy Mayor Forbes,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogas,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon, Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier,
No.
Councilmember Corey,
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye. And we can go down.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I,
we got 2
go
more.
ahead.
Okay.
Mayor and council, at this time, we need the council to review the resolution to establish the annual stormwater assessment fee.
Just shoot me.
I make a motion, we keep it the same.
Second?
Councilmember Bogas,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon,
No.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier,
What was the motion again, to keep everything the same?
Correct.
Stormwater.
pertaining to the annual stormwater assessment
We
fee.
didn't have a chance to answer any questions on this. I ask a question. Don't we have that encumbered tied up with the golf course? Isn't that money tied up in the golf course?
That's what we
To pay
use.
off the interest-free loan we're getting from Baron Collier?
We do have funds in both the maintenance and capital tied up in existing stormwater projects. Yes.
So we have a big pile of money coming at us, we gotta pay it off, right?
The draft budget allocates the projected revenue from the stormwater utility. So the current budget presented to you does have that allocation for both capital expenses as well as maintenance expenses.
So we still have enough money for maintenance.
No, that's part of the allocation of the stormwater assessment fee.
I think the answer, Mr. Mayor, that may be most enlightening is that the staff is not requesting, based on the current budget, an increase in the stormwater fee. It covers what's budgeted.
Okay, stay with the same, yes, aye.
Well,
Mayor Steinmeier, you voted yes?
Yes,
Councilmember Corey,
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
okay.
The next item I have
Delegate to Florida League of Cities.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is the 97th Annual Conference scheduled for August 10th through the 12th, and the Florida League of Cities does require that you appoint one delegate from the city.
I would like to make a motion that Fred Forbes, because we'll both be up there, but I think
I'll
Fred
second.
knows the issues, and
I'm gonna be leaving Friday, so if they need me to be in the meeting on Saturday, I wouldn't be there.
is the voting, I think, happens Friday.
Friday.
Okay, I can do it.
So my motion is I will be there with him, but the actual voting member would be Fred.
And I second that.
Any other comments? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Purdon,
Aye.
Councilmember Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier,
Aye.
Councilmember Corey,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes. Deputy Mayor Forbes, I'm jumping.
Yes.
Councilmember Fullick,
Aye.
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
May I make a suggestion? make sure you have an alternate that's gonna be there in case something would happen.
Because Carly's saying it might be Saturday. Yes?
They're indicating, is the league indicating that the,
The annual business session, which will be held on Saturday, August 12th.
I will not be there Saturday.
Well, then,
So, I guess,
I say Jesse then would be the alternative.
Hey, with that being said, I'm gonna, okay, so now I need to bring up an issue, because this was gonna be Fred's problem, but I want it to be all of ours. Holly Smith and John Gunter are running against each other for a position for League of Cities. I don't wanna be in the middle of that crap, to be honest with you. I like them both, but you have the mayor of Sanibel against the mayor, well, former mayor of Sanibel against former mayor of Cape. Regionally, they generally don't, it's never happened where it's contested regionally. So now essentially we would be picking whether we wanted to be nice to Sanibel or Cape with our vote, which actually Fred was gonna do until he's not. So now that I'm the one who's gonna have to do the vote, I would like to talk to y'all about it. I would say we don't vote in that portion of it if we get one.
That's, what happens is the nominating committee picks and has the vote. All the board does, then they accept that vote, and if they don't want to accept it, they have to have a 2/3 vote of the board to support another nomination other than the one the nominating committee.
They designate one candidate.
Right. And then what happens, it goes to the assembly, and then all we're doing is rubber stamping what the nominating committee did.
But Fred, if it's a one, say it's one, so it's, Gunter gets, 14 votes and Holly gets, 13 votes, and then it's a situation where now, literally, we're picking. And it's like, I don't necessarily want to be involved in, because okay, so say it's a 13-14 thing, and so now the slate is whoever won by that one vote. So now if you were not voting in that party, now you're.
No, that all happens in the nominating committee vote.
Okay, so after it comes out of nominating, we're not picking
All we're
one
doing
of the
is rubber
cities.
stamping what they did.
the nominating committee will have a slate, there'll be only one name on the slate.
Yeah, when they're done.
You think you can do that? Because
I mean-
I'll go up there.
Oh, if you would like to come vote, yes, please, come up. Come join us. I would love it.
Nominating committee, right? They're the
No,
ones
no,
that have the,
the no-
no,
yeah.
they have the responsibility.
None of us are on the nominating committee, that's it, and once it comes out of there, it's just a rubber stamp.
Okay,
It's more
I'm
of
good
an
with that.
It's more of an informality, that vote, than a formality.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there a second?
If somebody wants to go to if there's a meeting on Saturday and there's a vote, I'm not gonna be there. But I think the last vote will be on Friday. There may be a ceremonial meeting on Saturday morning.
Just to clarify, the request from the Florida League of Cities suggests that the annual business session, which is held on Saturday, August 12th, election of league leadership and adoption of resolutions are undertaken during the business meeting.
And
One official form from each municipality will vote on matters affecting the league.
Yeah, and
So I vote Jesse to be,
That's fine.
We need a second?
Second,
yep.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Yep.
Councilmember Fullick.
aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
Yes.
Councilmember Bogaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Purdon.
Regarding the Hurricane Ian recovery update, I only have one item to share, is that Tony Backhurst, myself, and Carly Sanseverino participated in the first steps of the FROC program, and that is similar to the expedited funding received from the federal government. This is now a program through the state where we're going to qualify for points based on staff's experience and education and based on policies and procedures, procurement policies. So it is not a sprint, it's a long marathon as we work through that process. To become pre-qualified should, in the very comforting situation that we go through another storm, we would be set up to receive reimbursements as quickly as possible.
fabulous.
You need a vote on that?
No, your staff is participating in the program for qualifications.
Okay, Council, Fred, you got any
Yeah, I have
hand up there?
I have a real quick one considering the hour. I had the city clerk send out an update to what was already approved unanimously in Basically, all it is, it's on the one where adopting different flooding standards, and I made it more flexible, so areas that don't traditionally flood or flood prone, they've got an option that they don't have to go to a 100-year storm. The big difference is proposing that software that's in existence can be upgraded to where you can have advanced flood prediction, and that's a good thing, which I'll explain. And possibly they may, the people that would do this may want to consider the option. You could also come up with a local storm surge prediction. Big thing is earlier prediction of flooding, local flooding where it's going to be severe. It's going to result in less cars being flooded out, insurance claims. Could also result in less vehicles being in the Gulf or the river or whatever, which causes pollution. And also it will tend to make people get out of Dodge that don't get out of Dodge, because they'll hear a report that your area in Lee County or in a city is going to be a 4 foot here, over here it's going to be 6 foot, over here it'll be 2 foot. So you'll have more information, and the information will be refined as it got closer to the storm. So, and there is no financial obligation to the city at all.
To clarify, I do not believe the council needs to vote on this. You previously gave direction to Councilmember Forbes to submit it. This is just for a tweaking of the
Yeah, it's a
item.
tweak. And by the way, Matt Feeney reviews it, and Ellie McEwen, and both of them said it was much better justified and much more, a better improvement over the original.
Great, thank you, Fred.
Okay, so I guess I don't need to get a motion, so that's fine.
No,
We
no,
can get home earlier.
Okay, Jamie, you got anything for us?
I do
now?
not.
Jesse?
I'd just like to thank staff, the work that you guys do, and what you put up with. Thank you. You do a great job, all of you.
Hey, Nigel?
Yes, sir. I did, basically for time's sake, can I just pass this out and give it to the clerk? So this is, one of my constituents called me and said that she and her neighbors had been picking up trash on this abandoned road. And if you look on the map, and I think there's a typo on there, it's got Cochran, which is actually North Riverside. I think the street is actually called Cochran, is it not? Yes. I forgive you. So if you look on the map there, the black square in the middle is actually Cochran. But what happened was, I guess in the economic downturn, that road was never completed up to the tracks. So what you see on the top left and the top right, it looks like a golf cart patch. Good news is staff looked into it. We own all that property. It doesn't encumber any of our homeowners. But I'd like to see that, some research done, but in our comp plan going forward, we're gonna need that. So just looking at what we can do to eventually,
I think you're looking for a CIP item in an out year,
yeah.
which we would bring back in a budget, but you were discussing not affecting this year's budget.
Correct.
It would be in an out year as a placeholder.
Conceptually, so I understand, are you saying you would like to beautify the paths there, or you want to make that road complete? Which one are you trying to do?
see a bit complete down the road.
Okay.
Where's it go to?
Right up the railroad tracks, Mayor, but the thing is that they never actually put in the road from Palm. It was never completed, it's just like a golf cart path.
And that last parcel wouldn't need to be done because it's all trees, so it would only be,
Well, yeah, but we could do it because we own it.
well,
Well, that current path, it says no motorized vehicles on it.
Right, because it's about the width of a golf cart.
Yeah, well, people walk on it, that's what it's about.
Well, and our
Sidewalk.
citizens have been cleaning it up. The good news was we found out staff has been cutting the grass.
So we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just making you all aware of it, but it's an
Great.
opportunity for us
What
because we already own the property.
What I understand is you wanted a placeholder for discussion by council about what you envision for it. Do you continue do you make it a roadway? Do you make it a bike path? Do you
Correct.
make beautification to it? That's for a future discussion, but there would be a placeholder for us to bring it up during our workshops for CIP.
okay.
Okay, Chris, Corey, do you have anything for us?
No, I think we've pretty well exhausted the discussion about the task force and the
Okay,
the
anything
blocker.
from the public? We're out of here, I guess. Motion adjourned.
There's two members of the public.
Yeah, they didn't budge.
Mike, do you?